I'm not gonna look for it, I'll return it back. It's not that
He
simple.
tucked it away somewhere, Steve, in there.
Okay, you probably put it in the file cabinet
I
in
heard
my
a puppy
office.
for one, this and
Yeah.
that and all kind of other stuff.
Yes. Let me know when you're ready. Let me welcome you to the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry, Lafayette Extension. We are in our final class in public speaking, and we want to congratulate Betty Sam for her presentation this morning in her speech introducing herself. Let's give her a hand. All right. So we are excited about that. Are we good, Jimmy? We're good. I can keep going. All right, so we're in chapter 7 of the textbook, and that deals with gathering material. You're going to find out that it is important as you go through the preparation of public speaking is going to require that you do some research. All right, and so we're on page 119 of the textbook, and if you notice on page 119 there are some subtitles, and that is using your own knowledge and experience. I'll comment on that. Doing library research. I tell my students at Southern University and everywhere I teach, the library is your best friend. A lot of people think about the library last. And you need to think about the library first and get to know a librarian. Someone that is personable, someone that is sensitive to your desire to learn and study, and those librarians are librarians because that's their passion. And so you need to get to know a librarian. Because if you know a librarian, they can get to information that you're not even aware of that might be available, but you wouldn't know a librarian would, especially information that's electronic information. All right? So doing library research is important. Searching the internet has become the most recent form of research. And in classes where internet research is required, there's a certain format that is required to document when you do use the internet. You use a bibliography just like you put information about what book or what journal or magazine you use for your information. There's a certain way that you format using the internet. And the librarian can help you to learn how to format that. And sometimes different schools have different writing requirements. And that means that they follow a certain format. You would have to know what your school would require. Now the interviewing part I think is important. We gave you that as an assignment. We're going to get to that. And then tips for doing research. When I was sitting where you're sitting, I did my dissertation that dealt with interviewing people from different ethnic backgrounds. And so I had to get to know Koreans. I had to interview Koreans. I had to interview Hispanics, all right, because they were included in my research. And it was very, very interesting. Interviewing could be very rewarding. You will find out, and you might want to make note of this. I'll wait for you to make note of this. You will find out that more information, you will find out that more information will be obtained from an interview than you can obtain from a survey. All right, read that back to me.
You will find out that more information will be obtained from an interview than you can obtain from a survey.
You will obtain more information from an interview than you can obtain from a survey. Can you guess why? Can you guess why? Just think about it for a moment. All right, go ahead, Jane. Why do you think you would get more from an interview than from a survey?
Because from an interview, you're talking to one person, and from what I've learned in this chapter, you actually try to get the leader.
Okay. All
They have
right.
to touch on all bases, and whereas a survey would be difference of opinion. You're dealing with different people.
Sure. In most cases, surveys will be based on a group of people and their opinion.
Right.
Okay, like 5 females, 10 males, or 100 Hispanics, 200 African Americans. So that is true. You are focusing on, write it down, in a survey, usually with a larger demographic. Through a survey, you are dealing with a larger demographic which relates to people that are being surveyed. I'll give you another point after you write that point about a larger demographic. Another important point about a survey is that a survey is pre-planned. It is pre-planned, or the survey targets a specific question. All right? Suppose that question is not what you're looking for. Then your survey would not really meet your need. Most surveys are pre-planned and targets a certain group, and the information that you want may not be the questions on the survey. So usually interviews will get you to what you want specifically, whereas surveys, write it down, are more general. Interviews are more specific. Surveys are more general. Interviews are more specific. When I was doing my doctoral dissertation, it was done during the time of the LA riots. And there was a lot of racial hostility going on in Los Angeles at the time. Reginald Denny was the white man that was pulled out of his truck and beaten in the streets. Do you recall that? Okay? It was a flashpoint, a location where he was beaten, and that the riot, of course, was a result of a black man being tased and beaten by the Los Angeles police. Do you remember who he was? Rodney King.
Yes.
Okay? And now, yes, his famous quote, "Can't we all get along?" And Rodney King now, unfortunately, is deceased.
Yes.
But the point is, that location where the white truck driver was pulled out of his truck and beaten became what is called the flashpoint of what really started the LA riots. And I would take my students to that location for them to get a feel of where it all happened. All right? So that was my field of research. So I went into Korean supermarkets and stores. And because there was tension among Koreans and African Americans, I'm an African American, so I wanted to talk firsthand with a Korean shop owner. Many of their shops were burned and targeted as, a part of what was happening in the riots. And so I made friends with a Korean store owner. It was an inside, what's called a swap meet, or what we would call, I'll have to think of the term. But anyway, it was like an indoor mall, like a flea market, but it's an indoor flea market. And so this Korean had a jewelry store in an indoor flea market, and I got to interview him, and it was very interesting about how they saw African Americans, how they had stereotypical ideas about African Americans, and of course their fear was they would be robbed by an African American. Okay, so anyway, all I'm saying is that when you do interviews, you get more specifics. When you do surveys, you get more generalities. All right, so interviewing is really important. And I believe that whenever you do research of any kind, if you can include an interview, even if it's a telephone interview, it adds so much meaning to your research. Always. All right? Okay, questions, comments about anything I've said so far?
Other than I can understand about the surveys, because on Family Feud, they take a survey
Okay,
with the question.
okay.
Then they present it to the families.
Yes,
And that's why sometimes they can't get the answer, because it's 100 people surveyed.
there you go. Yeah.
That's what you said, and
Yes.
it's targeted with a specific
Pers-
question.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
And
So-
nobody thinks the same then.
Yeah, so interviewing is very important. We're going to discuss your assignment in just a moment. Betty, you had a question or comment?
The comment was, me personally, I don't trust surveys
Okay, okay.
because, it's, like you said, it's always directed to a specific group.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have a survey right now, especially in the election.
Yes,
They're polling. This is another word for a survey.
sure.
So they're polling people, but they target a specific group about a specific person.
Okay,
And that is not,
The reality.
yeah, and it's not the whole, it's just a certain few.
sure.
And they're speaking for you, is
Yes.
why I like it, because it's not
Yeah.
realistic.
reality.
And
Yes,
I think too, in an interview, you can ask whatever questions you want.
Yes.
People
Yes.
open up to you one thing, maybe to something else. and that's how
absolutely.
you can dig and get-
Absolutely.
Can you really though, in all the interviews, ask what you want? Are there some topics that they tell you stay away from?
Well, I'm sure.
Before agreeing to the interview.
Well, I think that you should go into the interview knowing the parameters of what you want to discuss. If it's possible, you could get those parameters to the people you're going to interview before the interview.
Okay.
In other words, the interview is Monday of next week, and you could email the person and say, here are some of my questions. Are these questions okay for you?
Good.
You see, so your point is well taken. There might be some questions they may not want to address. For instance, when you watch CNN and you see people on television being interviewed by newscasters, most of the time the people being interviewed know the questions. They can choose to be interviewed, or they can, choose not to be. All right, so yes, there are parameters that could be set, questions and parameters that could be set. Sure. All right, let's look at page 119, gathering materials. Suppose you are planning a trip to India. That's interesting. I've been emailed by people from India. You want to know the major sites so you can work out an itinerary. You also need to know what things will cost, where the hotels are located, and how the train and bus systems work. How do you go about gathering all of this information is our question for today. You can talk to people who have traveled in India and get ideas from them. You can consult guidebooks. You can search the internet for information. If you have traveled to South Asia before, you can draw on that experience. Since you want your trip to be a success, you gather as much information as you can before you leave, okay? Gathering materials for a speech, highlight this, is like gathering information for any project, all right? Gathering information for a speech is like gathering information for any project. There are many resources available. If you take advantage of them, you can interview people with specialized knowledge. Highlight that phrase, specialized knowledge. You can do research on the internet or in the library. Sometimes you can use yourself as a resource whenever you have personal experience or above average knowledge about a subject. Let's turn first to the source of your own experience, all right? So the first subcategory or subtitle in gathering information is your own experience. We don't have to spend a lot of time here. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. One of the things that I need you to understand is everyone have a story. Everyone have an experience. And the way we deal with it in theology, you can write this down. For instance, in theology, we are all exegetes. E-X-E-G-E-T-E-S. We are all exegetes. What that means is that we all have our own interpretation of things that are spiritual. We are all exegetes, all right? So what that means is that if we're looking at a biblical passage, I could ask Jane, from your experience with that passage, what does it mean to you? Because you are an exegete. You have an interpretation that is unique to yourself. You follow me? The same is true with public speaking. Your own experience has already been documented. You know what it means to you. So, when anyone travels to Africa, if they consult with me, I promise you they'll have a better trip.
Right,
Ask Dr. Hill.
right.
Okay? All right? Because when you talk to someone who have experience, you can save yourself a lot of frustration and money and disappointments. Okay? So I think that's important. When I say use your own knowledge and experience, what do you think of, Carla? Your own knowledge and experience. If you were going to be consulted by someone, let's just say in the workplace, what would you say about your knowledge or experience as an employee, giving advice to someone else that's becoming an employee, specifically now in the Lafayette Police Department? You see, so you have your own experience as an employee. So give me one or two things that you would tell someone seeking employment in the Lafayette Police Department.
I would make sure that they understand that one of the most important things, because things are different everywhere in employment, but one thing that's unique to the Lafayette Police Department is they are lenient, but not lenient to where they allow you to break rules, because people come in and that's the first thing they see. That's what it is at the police department.
Sure.
And then they take advantage and they fall off quickly. We get a lot of new people that we lose because of that.
Okay.
They see the friendliness and they see all this. So I'll make sure that they understand that, you know, it's a very friendly place and very laid back.
Okay,
You know, so when you see that,
yes,
just don't get it twisted because
Yes.
they are all about business.
it's all about
It's
business.
all about business and they will protect the peace that we work in over there at any cost.
Exactly.
And I tell that to a lot of people, especially that comes in the section I work in.
That's good.
That is us. We're very laid back, and I see people come in and they see us, and I make my job look good.
Mhm.
But I try to make them understand there's work to be done.
There's work to be
Just
done.
because you see me looking good and walking around and drinking coffee and
Yeah.
visiting, it doesn't mean there's not work to be done.
Absolutely.
So,
So they need to understand the culture
yes.
of that particular job situation. Now, if you would compare Lafayette PD with NYPD, New York, all right, because of the vast number of people they are serving, every precinct would obviously have its own culture,
Right.
just like Lafayette has precincts, all right? So I think that it's good that you let them know it's a laid-back environment, but don't think you're not gonna work.
Right.
Very
And
good.
like we said, the different precincts, but with us, within the Lafayette Police Department, different departments.
There you
You
go,
have some people, they gotta come in and they gotta walk a straight line the whole time.
you see.
And then in our section, it's totally different,
Yeah.
but you just cannot take advantage of that.
Very good. So that's how you can inform people when it comes to your own experience. You are an expert in some area. Whether you think you are or not, your experience has given you an expertise. All right, so use it to help others. All right, questions? All right, let's move on to doing library research. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of reading here. Follow me on page 120. Even in this age of the internet, you will get some of the information for your speeches from the library. It contains many resources to help you find what you need, including librarians, the catalog, reference works, and databases. We'll look at each in turn. All right, so let's look at librarians. Read it for me, Carlette. Too often,
Too often, students waste their time wandering aimlessly in the library because they are afraid to ask for assistance. They don't want to appear stupid or bother anyone. But would you be as sensitive about asking a doctor for help with a medical problem? Librarians are experts in their own field, trained in library use and research methods.
highlight that. Librarians are experts in their own field, trained in library use and research methods. In other words, they know the science of library research. All right, continue.
If you have a question, don't hesitate to ask a librarian. He or she can help you find your way, locate sources, even track down a specific piece of information.
All right, what you'll find out is that, for instance, for every book that is published, there is an ISBN number. There's a number that is associated with every book that's published. And then every book that is published is also connected with the U.S. what? Department, okay? That means that there is a national database, all right, and there's information that is obtained in order for you to find your book, or for instance, if there's a book that's hard to find, a librarian can connect you electronically with a library, for instance, in New Mexico, that might have your book. Lafayette may not have it. Okay, Lafayette may not have that article. They may know about it, they may see it on their computer, but they don't have access to it, all right? Or a book that's been published in New York. The closest library might be Baton Rouge, you see, that actually have the physical book. But there is a way to order that book in Lafayette from Baton Rouge or New York, where you don't have to come, where you don't have to travel to get it. All right. So just this week, I was talking to the dean in the department that is associated with the class I teach, race relations, and I wanted to add a book Well, I found the book in what is a PDF format, which means that it's printable, and I don't have to have the physical book. I could just print it from the internet, all right? But then there was another book in philosophy that I wanted to add to my syllabus this year that was not available in a PDF format. So I called the publisher. The publisher was in London, England. Oxford University is in England. So I'm having a conversation in Lafayette, Louisiana with London, England, one of the most prestigious schools in the world. Oxford, when you say Oxford, you can't get much higher than that. Okay, so the book that I'm getting is coming from the Oxford University Press. Okay, I'm getting a hard copy of the book, but I followed their instructions to get a PDF version. In this case, they had to approve it first. So what they did while I was on the phone, Betty, they did what would be considered a background check. In 5 minutes, they knew where I taught, what I taught, how long I was at Southern University, what was my email address at Southern, what classes I. In about 5 minutes, they got a background check done on me to make sure I was Dr. Lloyd and that I was teaching a class that needed that book. Because that book is called a desk copy. They give desk copies for free to professors. You see, they did a background check on me from London.
How much was that book?
Free.
No, but the regular cost.
About $39. Yeah.
That's why they've been asking me so many questions for that desk copy. You asked me to,
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That was the one for race relations, I know.
no,
Oh.
this one that's coming up, the pastoral epistles.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, they've been emailing me back and forth.
That's why.
That's why.
That is why. They do a background check.
Mhm.
Have to
Okay.
change the subject report to add food smell good.
Okay. I know that's right. We got about 10 minutes and then we can take a break.
I was trying to ignore it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's nothing like Southwest Louisiana cuisine.
Yes.
I have traveled the world, and I tell you what, there's good food around the world, but you can't hardly
No, you
find
cannot.
better food than our food. It's all in the seasoning, right?
Yeah, and then the world goes out for New Orleans, but they need to come right here in Decatur.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the real food.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody's version of Creole is different,
Yes, it
but
is.
we have the authentic.
Oh, yes.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, so well, librarians are important, and what librarians will do is get you to the catalog search, which is now all done electronically. Reference works, encyclopedias. Back in the day, I used to have a, how you doing, Alonda? Back in the day, I used to have a floppy disk that was an encyclopedia research disk that I would use to do theology research. All of that now is electronically provided. Okay, could you imagine how much money Wikipedia is making now? Now, Wikipedia makes that information free to you, but every now and then you'll get a pop-up that says donate.
Yes.
And so they need funding too, although they're making it free to the public. All right, so I'm going to say 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a Wikipedia. You follow what I'm saying? All of that now is available to us. All right, look at the top of the page. Let's see. All right, I don't think we need to cover any of that. All right, let's go straight to your assignment now, and let's look at interviewing in preparation for your speech. Now, notice it actually starts at the bottom of page 129. let's look at the first paragraph, and then we're going to look specifically to your assignment. And before we do that, do you see on the top of page 129, using public speaking in your career? I want to just pause here for a moment and share with you that it's very possible that in your lifetime you can choose a number of different career paths. And I want people to understand that you don't need to be afraid of choosing a new one. And I think it's important even in this day, because of technology. For instance, we're in Southwest Louisiana. We're in the heart of what would be considered the oil industry, all right? Petrochemical engineering is major at UL, all right, and other universities in our area. But suppose the oil industry goes bust, and it did. Back in the 80s, we had a Christian school here at Spirit of Liberty, K through 12. And many of the parents who had kids in our school got laid off in the 80s. Our school closed basically because people could not afford private school education. It was a depression that hit the economy in the United States in the 80s. You might remember that. All right, so the point I'm making is this day and time, you need to be considering new career options. And don't be afraid to consider those options, because sometimes you have to reinvent yourself. If you don't want to work in retail the rest of your life, then you've got to make a decision. I'm going to get on a path to do IT work, all right? And basically, when you talk about intelligent technology, you want to be able to look at resources that will be employable for the next 20 or 30 years, okay? And that's one area that will be, okay? All right, so careers are important. Look at the paragraph at the bottom, interviewing. Most people think of interviewing in terms of job interviews or conversations with celebrities. But there is another kind of interview, the research or investigative interview. All right? I want you to highlight investigative interview. Among journalists, it is a time-honored way to collect information. It is also an excellent way to gather materials for speeches. All right? When done well, interviewing, like many things, looks what? Deceptively easy in practice. It is a complex and demanding art. The principles of effective interviewing fall into three groups. What to do before the interview, that's number one. What to do during the interview, that's number two. What to do after the interview, that's number three. All right, so that was your assignment for this week. In looking at those three categories, let's take one, Jane. In looking at that first category, what to do before the interview, what did you find?
Preparing the questions. Preparing the questions I want to ask.
Okay, so you want to prepare the questions you want to ask. Excellent.
And arranging them in an order. And I've also learned in reading that you leave the tough questions for last.
Okay, all right. Why do you think, what was the suggestion?
I believe it said because you're more toward the end of the interview, so you don't want to disrupt the interviewee's mind or something.
Okay,
I
all
think
right.
that's what I gathered from that.
Yeah, well, let me just share that in an interview, just like in counseling, you're developing a relationship. And you should want to first develop that relationship and make it non-threatening, get the person relaxed,
Right.
talk about things that are not, deeply troubling or stressful
Right.
at first. Then you could get to the tough stuff. So think of it as I'm developing a relationship in the first part of the interview, and then I'm getting down to the specifics.
So you're setting the stage.
Exactly. All right, Carlette, what did you find in number 1?
I think my biggest thing was about knowing your purpose for your
Oh.
interview.
All right,
I
good.
think it's important because you know why, which helps you to know what questions you want to ask, because now you know why you want to do this interview, so then you know what you want to get out of the interview, so that helps you to prepare your questions better.
For sure.
I think it's important to also make sure that your interviewee knows the purpose also of your interview. I mean, it causes them to need to care. If they know that you're concerned about a certain topic for a certain reason, then they would understand
Sure.
why you want the information that you do, which to me would make, help them to open up more. And where it tells you to like after your introduction, to restate your purpose
Yeah,
again.
yes.
I think it also helps somewhere down the line in the interview to restate, your purpose. And if you can remind them,
Sure.
you might be able to start a question off by saying, because we're so concerned with the conditions at this school again.
Yes.
And then you can ask your question again somewhere later on in the interview.
Right.
But I think that's the biggest, one of the most important things.
And
Yeah.
exactly, and purpose is always important because it keeps you on point.
Exactly.
It keeps you targeting what you really
Right.
want to get from that interview.
Right.
So I think that's good.
Right. Because
Then-
I notice it does say if they veer off a little bit,
Yes,
deal with it, but
Yeah,
come back.
come
quickly
back to it.
Exactly.
absolutely.
Mhm.
You'll notice on television that journalists will do the same thing.
Right.
What we really want to talk about is this,
Yeah.
Right.
because you could go so many ways with that discussion.
Right.
All right, Betty, your comments.
My comment is, and then you have to make sure that you're arranging the interview. You're asking what is available to them.
That's good.
Whoever you're interviewing.
That's
You
good.
need the time and the place. And you also need to remember never to overstay your welcome.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. You have
be
to,
on time.
yeah, and you have to be time sensitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like right now, I got 2 minutes left. Okay.
Good, good.
All right. Okay, now let's take number 2. When we look at those 3 categories, what to do before the interview, number 2, what to do during the interview, and number 3, what to do after the interview.
Yes.
All right. So what did you have, Jane? What to do after the interview?
Oh, during or after?
No, after.
After.
I'm skipping that one.
Oh,
After the interview, if I'm allowed to record, I have that to rely on. But if I don't have that, best thing for me to do is go over my notes while everything is fresh in my mind and kind of rewrite all of that.
Yes. Or reorganize your thoughts.
Reorganize that, yeah, while
Yes.
it's still fresh, right
Sure.
after the interview.
Sure, that's good. It's called, write it down, debriefing. You want to, at the end of the interview, you want to do what's called debriefing. And debriefing could be done with that person you're interviewing, or it could be done with you and your colleagues that may have been a part of the interviewing process.
And I also learned to always thank the interviewee
Yes.
for their time and their patience.
That's good. That's good because everybody's time is valuable.
Yes.
All right, any questions? All right, this has been good. You've been a good class in public speaking. You all did well. Give yourselves a hand. All right, so we are done. I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back and introduce systematic theology as we continue with eschatology. All right. See if there is a pause button. Did you see Jimmy downstairs, Alana?
yes.
Okay. Let's see. See if you see a pause button on the video camera. Yeah, just see it if you see a pause button. You don't want to touch it?
For me?
Yeah, or just see Jimmy, just get Jimmy for me. Do you see a pause button? Look on the screen. Do you see a place where you can pause it?
Well,
It might be on the
is
laptop.
it red?
That's
see a
okay.
red-
Don't,
I see a red button. I don't want to touch
that's
it.
okay, don't worry about it. We'll just let it roll.
Don't touch the red button.
Okay.
But
All right.
Bishop, thank you too.
Okay, amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen. I'm gonna get Jimmy to come and
You want me to go down there and get it?
pause it and, I'm going down anyway, Alonda, that's okay? Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the donation. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
One second. You signed in. Let's go move it to the front.
I feel like that, yeah, because it's something you can do.
I was going over it where y'all were talking in my mind. It's like, oh, did we do that for our interviews? Did we do that? Did we do that?
Oh, since I started classes, I was able to see things in my life that were there. But my mind had too much clutter, I couldn't see it.
Or you didn't want to.
That too, or I didn't want to, or I chose not to deal with it.
Yes.
But
And, yeah, and
But since I started classes and I've gotten closer to God,
it's like you got order.
and it's almost like I can deal with it because He gives me the way to deal with it. Now, the public may not understand why I'm dealing with it that way, but it don't matter. Like it used to matter before, but all I'm doing is seeking the peace.
Exactly.
And you see a lot of times,
Where's the pause button, Jim?
a lot of times,
He didn't teach me that.
You learn about
He said just hit record and then.
Because you see that red one, I think that's stop.
Oh no, you don't do it from there.
and you know, another thing too, that the practice do is,
Yeah,
yeah, you bother me or letting them know. It's helping us healing, cutting to the root, as one
A
about,
new class?
you know, so you
And
can
you know
live
what,
it
girl?
and you
So we gonna stop this one and then record
Some
another.
of them
Cause you can't.
was in my
Yeah.